Hey everybody, it's Nick here from ESCBubble, and I'm back with the team to do a wrap of what we've seen so far and have a grand final preview for you. So I've got Anne, Kyle, David, Joe, and Jan might be joining us too. So hopefully he'll be able to pop in at some point. So obviously we've had two very tense, very interesting shows. Not as tense as they could have been because of the way they did the results, but they were still an interesting order, I guess. But what we want to look back on first is obviously some songs didn't make it through, who you may have expected to go through, or you just felt got left behind, put a good performance in and didn't get the recognition. So who for you, from both semi-finals, fit that criteria for you? I'll start with you, Anne.
I think I've got one main from each semi-final, and I know Joe's probably going to look daggers at me because they're probably Joe's ones too. Romania from semi-final one, she did the best performance we've seen from her all week. The song has got a certain amount of vulnerability. The song is very meaningful to her, and I felt that came across really well, and it was just a shame that it didn't make it. I wouldn't be surprised if that was 11th, to be honest. Same in semi-final two with Denmark. I'd want to say my absolute queen from Latvia, Samantha Tina, but she didn't give it her best crown last night. I don't know if she's overstretched her voice, but the vocals weren't as spot on as we've heard them in the last week. So it'll be Denmark. Denmark last night, perfect party closer. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And yeah, really sad. And I still feel a bit sad this morning. So come on, guys, you've got to lift me up.
We're going to lift your spirits, don't you worry. And I'll let Carl lift your spirits next with his picks. So.
Yeah, going to give a shout out to Croatia. I think Albina really, elevated what they could with the song, which I think was a great catchy chorus. A bit lacking in other places in the song, maybe. And I think in that it's semi-one with a lot of upbeat pop girls, there was always going to be one that was going to fall. And sadly, I think Fraser was the weakest of them, and sadly, it did fall. Also, Romania, I think, if another week, perhaps, I think that performance would have been spot on and elevated it to a level that the studio does have and the music video has. So very sad for her as an artist, because I think she would have really benefited from going through to the Saturday night. Regarding semi-two, there weren't any real shots. I would say I think Denmark was a great show closer. I think they would have been close as well. I predicted 9. I was Moldova over Denmark, Denmark over Moldova. So got to say a word for them. But I think we still have a great final, and everyone did a great job. I think no one really messed up that badly. It's just the way it goes. We've got to lose 7-6.
Okay, David, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, so Romania and Croatia, obviously semi-final one, both songs that I wanted in the final if I was to kind of put my favourites through. But I thought also Australia was quite hard done by. I think obviously they were at a disadvantage because they didn't have as long to rehearse. They were in a small studio with limited kind of capability anyway. But I thought actually that performance was probably the best I've ever heard the song. I've not always been a massive fan of it. I've always thought it's a bit much. But I really actually was quite surprised she didn't qualify. I thought she was going to go through because it felt like a really strong performance. But honestly, semi-final was so strong that I think even maybe it was just me being a bit drunk on wine, but even Macedonia sounded okay on the night. So perhaps it could have honestly gone anyway. I think semi-2 was a lot more predictable. Perhaps there was like 9 that were pretty solid, I think, but. Yeah, I thought Austria Austria impressed me on the night last night. So I think that was the one that I'd probably be most sad about not making it. But yeah, as you said, great set of qualifiers for both, to be honest. Not much in the final I don't like. So let's bring it on.
That wine you were drinking semi-final one must be good stuff. You must recommend it at some point. Joe?
Yeah, I think for me, the semi-finals are a great spectacle. I think it's great that we have them because it adds that kind of sort of extra drama in. I do have a tendency to lose some of my favourites pretty much every year in the semi-finals, and this year was absolutely no exception. But yeah, to lose 3 of my overall top 5 was a bit of a body blow, I have to say. I think they've all already been mentioned. So Romania, I just think, is an absolutely stunning song, and I think she gave a really good performance on the night of the televised show. I didn't see the jury show myself, but I understand that there were some challenges that she had in that show. And last night, Fit of Klammer from Denmark, still rocking the t-shirt this morning. Yeah, really disappointed for them. And of course, our Queen Samantha Tina. So yeah, I know just how hard she has worked to not only get there, but actually while she's been there in Rotterdam as well. And we wrote yesterday about her new single, I'm the Woman. But I do think actually if she'd have chosen that instead, I think she could have had an even better chance of doing really well, because I think it's more accessible as a song. Whereas I see, The Moon is Rising is something, it shows off her vocals and kind of everything else, but maybe the song isn't as accessible to a televoting public. I mean, we'll get the rundown on Saturday after the grand final results, of course, and we'll see who did well with the juries and who did well with the televotes. But yeah, I had hoped that we might get to see her in the final as well.
I think you make a good point. The last two shows have really shown to me what was accessible, what wasn't, and accessibility is very important for people who haven't seen the songs before. And sometimes those first impressions you get, they're really important. I had the amazing feat of 11 of my top 12 getting through, which never happens. So obviously I'm on cloud 9, which is why I don't have eyes like this morning. I'm on the Adrenalina running on that at the moment. But semi-final one, the only one I lost from my tops was Croatia. I did expect to lose a pop female banger. So it being that one didn't really surprise me.
To be fair, Nick, you expected to lose more than one.
I did, yeah.
Female banger.
It should be a bloodbath like 2017. My goodness, yeah. I lost my top 2 in the semis that year. So yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, on the pop female side, everybody performed really well. You can't fault Albina for her performance. She pretty much smashed it. And it's just a case where she's on earlier than, say, Azerbaijan, which had a much better slot if you think about the running order, and maybe those sort of things do come into play. In semi-final 2, must have been my wine as well. I'm only joking, Joe, but I really did enjoy Denmark. I thought it was a really good show closer. I just think the fact it came after Switzerland really did show up the contrast between the two songs. And while Switzerland was a very intense performance, this was as unintense as you could get. So that probably hindered it in a way. And then obviously, yeah, a shout out for Samantha Tina. She lived her dream. She got her moment on stage. I hope she remembers the positives from that, because I think you're right. I don't think the song is that accessible. I thought Still Breathing was a lot more accessible personally. And, I hope she doesn't take too much of a knock from it. And she's got a new single out and she's got something to positive to focus on. So obviously, what we don't know yet is who may have won the last 2 nights, who may have topped the televote, who have may top the jury, and who may have won overall. So I'm going to let you all speculate a bit as to who you think may have won. I will put a few stats up on the screen just so everyone at home can see what's doing well around Europe. But David, I'll let you go first on this one. Who do you think?
Yeah, in the essence of time, I'll be pretty snappy about it. I think,
sure.
Semi won. I don't think the jury televote winning was the same. I think Malta won the jury, and I think that Ukraine had a great shot at winning the televote. I mean, it's been doing great on the ESC Tracker, on Spotify, on iTunes, etc. all week, and the video views as well on YouTube are sky high in comparison. Semi 2. Oh, it's a bit more difficult to judge. I think I'm still going for Iceland. I think they had a good shot of winning both, to be honest. Both televote and the jury vote. And actually, Iceland is currently in kind of the top 50, I think, in the UK charts, which doesn't normally happen. So, I think Iceland did both televote and jury in semi 2.
Okay, Carl, do you want to carry on from there?
Yeah, semi 1, I think I kind of agree. I think Malta won the jury, and I think Ukraine could have sneaked the televote win out of there. How that combines together, I don't know. Semi 2, it's a bit more tricky to predict, isn't it? I think I'm between Bulgaria, Switzerland, and Iceland. I think Switzerland perhaps won the televote. Bulgaria won the jury, but Iceland won overall.
Okay, Joe, how did you think it may have played out?
Yeah, so I think the guys are probably right. I think looking at the bounce that that Shum had on ESC Tracker straight after the semi-final. It was getting all the streams, and it clearly looked to me like that's the televote winner. But I do wonder if it might have struggled perhaps a little bit with the juries. As for the jury winner, I don't know. I think people are still sleeping on Lithuania, I have to say. And I think that would have had broad appeal as well. It hasn't necessarily kind of sort of come through in all of those stats, but it's more of a visual than anything else. So maybe you wouldn't necessarily see that in Spotify. I think I'm a big fan of that song, and I very rarely stream it on Spotify. I like to kind of sort of watch it with the performance. So yeah, I think maybe semi two. I think there were two standouts. Switzerland and Iceland. I think they were top two with the televote, and I think they were probably top two with the jury as well, whichever way round. I thought both were outstanding. Iceland may or may not have had a bounce with their circumstances, and it is a real shame that they weren't able to be there. But in some ways, and I'm sure they'd much rather be there than not, it might actually help them with, particularly with televoting, because there's an additional story that kind of sort of goes along with it. So, yeah, I think those two.
Okay, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I'm rubbish at talking about stuff like this because I do it all from here, not from here. So I have no idea about the stats that I'm looking at or anything like that. So I am literally the worst person to talk about this. But my thoughts, Joe, you're reading my mind again, would be that Lithuania would be a great jury winner because it's a package and it's got everything really. Also, I think it's got to be Ukraine has got to be the televote winner because it just went off with such a pop. The semi-2, I have no idea about juries. What were juries looking at? I have no clue. But televotes, I want to put Finland in the mix for televote winner as well. When it was the rehearsals, the jury rehearsal that Joe and I blogged, go and read it. It's a good read. We heard them just screaming for Finland. Finland got the biggest shout out in the hall that night, and it wouldn't surprise me if the two televote winners were the last envelopes opened on the semi-finals.
Yeah, I had that thought as well. I did notice that the last two out were probably really strong on the televote. So I don't know whether that was deliberate or not. But I've got down, I'll keep it brief. I've got down semi-final 1, televote winner Ukraine. Jury winner, I'm differing a bit from Malta. The running order gives me, gives me the jips about it. But it was my instinct that they would have had enough jury work put in beforehand, whatever that means. And then Ukraine, I've put overall. I've moved from Malta because I think Ukraine won the televote by enough, more than Malta may have won the jury vote. So combine the two, I'm slightly favouring Ukraine. Semi-final 2, just looking at the stats, like you just said. I think Finland may have won the televote. I'm not sure though. It's all a bit up in the air. Sometimes these Spotify stats take 24 hours to update, so just a caveat on that. And it's quite obviously a reliable tracker when you've got that data. I think Switzerland won the jury vote, although Iceland could have. But I think Switzerland's a more jury-friendly song than Iceland. And then, considering how well Switzerland seems to be doing on the tracker, I'll put Switzerland as the winner overall, just combining the two. So, moving on from that, I just want you to pick out maybe one or two who you think got a very lucky save in either the televote or the jury. You can pick whichever one you want, but just who's lucky to still be here on Saturday, based on their performances. Kyle, do you want to go first?
I think a couple for varying reasons. I think that in semi-1, I think Belgium would have got a good jury boost, but I think deserved. I don't think they would have been awful in the televote, but I think enough to carry them over. I think Israel would also benefit those whistle notes, to any jury member that's trained in vocal coaching and anything like that at all. That's a big mark that you stick above a lot of others. And in semi-2, on the televote side, I think, I think Moldova is a very, very lucky to get through after some of those notes, which were some sung by her, and the notes that were sung by the backing singer off stage while she didn't make any noise with her mouth. But yeah, she's a lucky girl. What was the breathy bit about as well at the start? It was very odd, but yeah.
She was playing up some kind of Marilyn Monroe thing because she was doing a lot of ooh as well. And that's, you know, it was just, didn't do it for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
She's lucky to be there. There you go, I'm done.
Do you want to carry on, Anne, as you're in flow?
No, that's it. That's it.
Oh, okay. I'll come back to you then. Right, I'll go to David instead then. I'm sure he's ready. Right.
Yeah, I think Belgium is probably, and Israel in semi-1. I think also maybe Azerbaijan got the save from the televote side. I can't imagine they did too much in the jury. In semi-2, I agree. I think Natalia Gordienko, probably the worst qualifying performance, I think, in modern history at Eurovision. It's honestly up there with Blanche's semi-final performance for me. Vocally, it didn't even look good. But I don't, you said televote. I think actually the juries have saved it because I won't go into too much detail, but we all know what hopefully I'm thinking in line with why juries might support Moldova. But that's the only explanation that I have as to how that song could possibly have qualified, because otherwise it would honestly, it had to have been bottom 3. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that as well.
Okay, we'll move swiftly on to Joe. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree slightly over Moldova in the sense that I actually think that the jury is probably where she struggled, because having blogged the jury show with Anne, she did not give her best performance in the jury show at all. And actually the performance last night was much, much better. So after the jury show, I had her chances really way down, but actually she was a lot better. I thought for the televoting. Although interestingly, I mean, I get exactly what you're saying or not saying, David, in terms of kind of sort of the jury impact. And I know we've talked over, prior years about potential irregularities in kind of sort of jury voting and the potential for it to kind of sort of be manipulated or what have you. But there is a change in that this year, in the sense that the jurors have not been made public. So ordinarily we know who all of the jurors are in advance of the shows. That's very much not the case this year. So that should mean that, I mean, jury votes are always very, very transparent anyway. We get the full download of, exactly who jurors are and exactly their rankings. So I'm hoping that means that the jury vote will be completely, full of integrity. And if it is, then I do suspect that that's where Moldova would have struggled, and then maybe she brought it back with the televote. The other good thing with Moldova that works in her favour is that the main hook isn't actually necessarily the vocal. Yes, she's got that big final note, but it's those dirty beats and the choreo that is always going to come across well. So, but I still think that kind of sort of scraped home in 9th or 10th. I do wonder as well about Albania. I think Albania would have had a very strong jury score, but I don't think it's as accessible with televoters. So I think that might have also kind of sort of been down there. I mean, we'll talk about the running order in a moment, but Albania have been given the number 2 slot, which traditionally, when you look at kind of sort of the full breakdown of the results, goes to one of the nations that finished 10th in the semi. Although again, we are told that the semi results are only known by the EBU and not necessarily by the producers who are determining the running order. But I suspect that the producers kind of strongly suspect that maybe she sneaked in 10th.
Yeah, I'd have my doubts about that. Obviously, I want to move on to the final very quickly, but Anne, if you just want to touch on anything that caught you, no?
Not really, no. I'm still really salty about some of the results last night, that's all. And as it was pointed out to me last night, the only song in a native language that didn't make it is Denmark. So that's probably worth saying just before we move on.
My what I'd written down for semi-final was exactly the ones that David mentioned. Israel, Belgium on the jury side, and maybe Azerbaijan on the televote side. The one I did put down as maybe quite heavily jury oriented in semi-final 2 is maybe Bulgaria, because it's not really doing anything on the tracker at all, like literally nothing. And obviously, it's got to have its points from somewhere. So it might have done a lot better on jury than televote. So that's just something I'm throwing out there anyway that I've seen differently. And yeah, Albania, I think you're right in regards to what you said about that.
on Bulgaria, Nick, I think when you look at their odds as well, they seem to have absolutely plummeted.
Yeah, they've gone down quite a lot. So
being, you know, in that, you know, that top group of 6, which was a runaway group, which actually now is actually kind of sort of, you know, increasing size. So even Portugal, I think, has gone above, which I still don't quite understand either. But
okay, right. So let's move on to the running order, which I've got from the marvelous ESCBubble website here for your viewing pleasure. Now, obviously, there are several things I think we should go over. One, does that running order make sense in regards to a coherent show for the viewer? Who benefits from this running order? Who's lost out? Just before, I just want to caveat before I hand it over. I think even if you take the running order out of consideration, this is one of the strongest finals we've ever had. And it was always going to be difficult to fit these songs in. But I just want to make this point because it's been bugging me for hours. Probably dreamt about it as well. The fact that from song 7 to song 17, there are no songs from semi-final 1. I just don't understand. I can't see how you'd have 10 songs in a row and not have one at least. That makes no sense to me. But I will hand it over to you to have now, Anne, you've been very quiet, so I'm going to ask you to
just be thankful I've been very quiet. It must have been lovely for you. I was looking at this morning and trying to make get some ideas in my head. There's a couple that seem a little bit out of place for me. On the whole, it looks great. I know it just sounds like it's a horrible draw, but I still wish the UK had opened. We'd have been ready to light up the room and we'd have got that out of the way. Cyprus opening, to me, I mean, great. It's great to open with a banger, but I think that's the wrong banger. I don't like it there. Serbia and United Kingdom as well. That's a horrible little run of 2. The other thing, you're going to get a bit of whiplash from Finland, Bulgaria, Lithuania as well. Luckily, it didn't go Finland, Bulgaria, Ukraine, because then I would have had to be hospitalised. So that is good that they've got Lithuania in there as a bit of a buffer. And was anybody really surprised that San Marino won last? I don't think so. It's Flow Rider. He's world famous. You'll have to watch for 3 hours to see him though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to keep us hanging on. Joe.
Yeah, not surprised at all that Zenit and Flow Rider have been given that final slot, and I think that actually is a good slot for them as well, because I think, you know, going from immediately performing and straight into the voting, when you expect, you know, people that are, if people do just tune in for Flow Rider, you know, I think that could really help them from a televote perspective. Although what the juries will think of Adrenalina, I think is perhaps yet to be seen. I think it's a really interesting running order, and it's not necessarily the running order that I would have chosen. I just want to talk very quickly about Malta. So, you know, people are still talking about, you know, Malta is potentially the semi-final winner of semi-final 1. I'm not so sure. I've never been quite as kind of sort of on that message as many others. Have they done Malta dirty by putting them in place number 6? I don't know necessarily. We've seen songs from the first half of the running order win in recent years. I don't, you know, think you necessarily have to be in the second half. And if you win the semi-final, should you therefore automatically get like an 11 or a 12 or something like that, where we've seen winners come from? Again, I don't know. They've put Iceland and Switzerland together at the end of that first half, but actually Malta have been left kind of sort of almost to shine on their own in that early part, in that first quarter. And maybe that will actually help. So it could actually be a good sign for Malta that, you know, they've not necessarily kind of sort of buried them in number 6. Actually, I think it's not so much about where you are in the draw, it's about where you are in relation to where everyone else is, particularly for, you know, those that are, you know, expected to do very well. So I actually think it's a good draw for Destiny and Malta, and I think they won't be as displeased as perhaps many people might think.
Yeah, I mean, the market's reacted badly to it, but, you know, I think you make some valid points as to how it stands out. David and then Carl, what observations have you got?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to be, questioned about this running order, but I'll stick to 3 kind of main points. Firstly, I don't understand at all what they were thinking the first half. You've got, I think, 8 female acts and 5 male acts, like vocalies. Vocal wise, and then obviously the second half is majority male dominant. And yet all 5 of the male performers in the first half are between 7th and 13th. And you've just got a long run of female at the start, which I don't mind personally, but I think that they're supposedly meant to like separate it up and make it so that people can stand out. And I don't think that that necessarily does help people to stand out. But anyway, I think secondly, the run from 13th to 15th is an abomination. Maybe it's just not me. Like, I like Spain, but I appreciate that's very much a minority opinion. Moldova is, I mean, it was one of the worst performances in the semi-finals, and Germany is one of the most annoying songs that I've ever heard in my life. So for me, I've got 3 songs in a row that I'm gonna, I don't know, pop the shops, bake a cake. I don't know what I can do in that time, but I'll definitely be doing something. And then the other thing is that I just think the whole running order, it's really just kind of signposting for an Italy win. I like to think that they try and give equal opportunity to like different people. I think Malta actually has probably got the best slot out of the other people in that 6, because you've got Switzerland and Iceland back to back. You've got Lithuania, Ukraine, and France all together as well. And I don't think that, I think that that's going to detract from maybe Ukraine's jury vote coming before France. And I think it's going to detract from France's televote coming after Ukraine. And likewise, the Iceland and Switzerland being next to each other doesn't make any sense to me at all either. But at least we'll have a good show. We've got 70 up tempos, we've got 70 great songs, and the qualifiers mostly were, I think, correct. Yeah, and also someone should mention that obviously Azerbaijan and Norway are back to back. The EBU are really trying to make that kind of like showmance, whatever you want to call it, a thing. So fair play to them.
Yeah, to touch on, I agree that with Anne, I think the UK would have been a better opener and done the UK better for it. I think coming after Serbia with such high energy they provided last night, the UK's in the fault so flat after that. Yeah, the first 6 all being female vocals, I also find a bit odd. Russia, Malta back to back, you got female empowerment in the Russian language and then female empowerment in the English language back to back. A little bit odd, but I do think Malta does stand out being between ones that aren't that high up in the betting odds. You know, you've got the run of Belgium, Russia, Malta, and then Portugal and Serbia and UK again. You know, so it does kind of stand out on its own. But you know what? I don't get too caught up in the running order. I love the diversity. I love how we're going to be going from Spanish ballad, Moldovan turbo pop to then Germany, Finland, Bulgaria, Lithuania. It's such a whiplash, as Anne said, back and forth. So I think we're in for a great show, and yeah, looking forward to it.
You've all covered mostly the points that I was going to make. So I'll just, a couple of things, observations. The running order gives a really nice space for Italy and San Marino to shine, I felt, and actually squeezes the life out of Sweden, which maybe was the intention. Some people thought it was good for Sweden. I don't particularly think so. And then, yeah, I just agree, going back to Joe's point, I think Malta can shine from that spot, although Portugal is performing very well. So maybe Portugal was the winner out of those 2 in regards to that placement. But we're going to, you know, we could speculate for hours, couldn't we? But, you know,
should we mention as well that we've got the 2 middle fingers together and they're almost in the middle? I think that's good.
Oh yeah,
I think that was a present for David, obviously, because obviously he loves those 2 songs so much. Yeah, 2 double.
I like Finland.
Yeah. I like Germany.
There you go. Right. Okay. So let's wrap up with the big question: who's going to win? After you've seen everything, who would you actually have in your top 3, and who is your dark horse, your favourite saying, Anne? And let's put the odds market up so you can have a look at that whilst we go through that. And I will start with Kyle.
Yeah, I still have an overriding feeling that Iceland are going to win. They're going to get a great setup from the commentators, the fact they're not there, and I think it's going to get a lot of goodwill. And from other countries that didn't have in that semi-final, you know, like Norway, like Sweden, like Ireland, who know a bit more of his story, I think they're going to get a great televote boost from then. And top 3, my top 3, I think are Italy, France, and Switzerland. But props to Serbia.
Okay, David?
Yeah, quite similar. So I think Italy, as I said, with the running order, I think they've been given a free run. So I do think Italy now will win. But I think in the top three with them will be Iceland, Switzerland, and you can't rule out, as someone said before, there's about 6-7 songs there that I don't think you can rule out to win, which is super exciting, right? And also likewise, I think Serbia needs a mention in there as well. So love Serbia. I don't think it will win, but I just love it. So go Hurricanes.
Okay, Anne?
1, 2, girls, come on. Yeah, I think Iceland have got this sewn up, and I don't understand why out of the top 6 in the betting odds, they're like 6th. And I don't get it. What am I missing, or what are they missing, or it's weird. Yeah, but my top 3 are definitely Italy and Ukraine and Lithuania. I'd love that to be a top 3. I'd make a fortune. Dark horses for an each way bet. I've got to say Portugal, because we just don't know. Unknown quantity from absolutely 0 to, oh look, they were quite an easy qualifier in the end. Weird. Dark horses, top 10.
Okay, Joe.
So I think I'm actually going to join you all actually in sharing the Iceland love. And at those prices, I think I might even have a nibble myself, because I think Italy do have a great draw, but there is just still a part of me that thinks, although it's a fantastic production and I really see the quality in it, is it still perhaps just a little bit too niche to have the kind of sort of broad appeal that I think you would need to be a winner? I'm not sure. Yeah, let's go for Iceland as the winner over Italy. My own personal top 3. I've been thinking about this all morning because all of my favourites have gone. So I need a new top 3. I need a new flag to wave, and I'm looking around desperately. So I've got a cushion.
What you got? Right.
So yeah, we'll go for Lithuania, and I think people are sleeping on Lithuania as well. I'm going to still have that as the dark horse. I think, you know, seeing that as low down as it is in the odds is extraordinary, because, you know, I do still think they have an awful lot of quality and a great show. Elsewhere in my top 3, maybe Greece. I quite like Greece. Yeah, and probably Iceland. So yeah, I'm going to have to try and start to get excited about those 3 now.
Right. Well, you can have Greece as your dark horse because it's 330 to 1. So
yeah, that's,
you could be very rich if you
yeah, I mean, that's
pulled that one off, right?
Yeah, maybe worth a sneaky each way though.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up quickly because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So obviously, if you do have a bet, everybody gamble responsibly. With regards to the market, obviously Italy are favourite for a reason. They have a very good draw. The song is doing very well on streaming platforms and has a good profile going in. And there's a worthy favourite. I do think that it may not be for everybody because obviously because of the genre. So that is its main drawback, I would say. I don't like France's running order. I think it doesn't work after Ukraine, having listened to it. So I ruled that out. So the other 2 in my top 3, I've got Iceland and Switzerland. I could see all of them finishing in any of those 3 spots. So, but my head is saying Italy at the moment. And then for dark horses, I picked 3. So Ukraine I've got, it's not really a dark horse, it's 10 to 1 now. So and same for Portugal at 60 is a much better value bet than that, given how it's performing. And if you want a outsider for a top 10 or a top 15, I think the Netherlands can do really well. I think the running order worked pretty well for it. But we are going to have to wrap up. So don't forget to follow all our coverage of the grand final. We've got some more interviews coming out. We'll be live blogging it. We'll be back on the Twitter. It's been a pleasure to obviously share all our thoughts with you over the last 2 weeks. And we hope you enjoyed the Eurovision grand final. Have a great one. Enjoy your night. And goodbye from us. And we will see you next year, hopefully.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.